Good evening, one and all. We shall be talking about the second romantic critic described in a syllabus. The name of the critic is Mary Wollstonecraft. So you can see her picture over here. Uh, she was born in 1759 and there is some typing error, and died in 1797. Actually, she cannot be considered directly romantic critic as such, but she was there during this period. So she's considered as a romantic critic. So we have grouped her under this particular unit. So Mary Wollstonecraft, who was uh, married to William Godwin, who was very famous romantic philosopher. So her married name was Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin. She was born on 27th April 1759 in London and died on 10th September 1797, again in London itself. So you can see her picture over here. She was an English writer and passionate advocate of educational and social equality for women. So this is very important. Apart from being a writer, she was a passionate advocate of educational and social equality for women especially. She was rather a daughter of a farmer, and she actually worked. She taught at a school, she worked as a governess. So she lived a very, what do you call, life of hardships, full of hardships. And she has shared her experiences, and these experiences inspired her views. Actually, she worked at school as a governess, so that experience inspired her views in Thoughts on the Education of Daughters, which was published in the year 1787. She wrote this particular book, and her thoughts in this particular book were inspired by her experience as a governor at a school. In 1788, she began working as a translator for the London publisher Joseph Johnson, who published several of her works, which includes a novel, Mary, a Fiction, in 1788. So we can understand her contribution to the literary sphere and her mature work on women's place in society. So we are going to study the chapter from this particular book, a vindication of the rights of women. This book was published in the year 1792, and this is very famous literary discourse, rather, which calls for women and men to be educated equally. She asked for equal rights of women. So her thinking, her thoughts are highly inspiring for equality, gender equality, we can say. A vindication means, some kind of what you call defense or advocacy, we can say. She advocated the rights of women. In 1792, Wollstonecraft left England to observe the French Revolution in Paris. You might be knowing that the French Revolution took place in the year 1789. And then she left England to observe the French Revolution in Paris, where she lived with an American, Captain Gilbert Imlay. And in the spring of 1794, she gave birth to a daughter, Fanny. But the following year, their relationship broke down because of certain kind of misunderstanding, distraught. And she attempted suicide. She returned to London to work again for Johnson and joined an influential radical group. After that particular attempt of suicide, she returned, okay, to London, and she started working for Johnson, the publisher, and this particular influence. She joined a group, I told you, the radical group, and that really inspired her. So this particular joining of the group, this group gathered at his home, at Johnson's home, and included William Godwin, whom she married later. William Godwin was a very great philosopher. Thomas Paine and Thomas Holcroft, William Blake. You might be knowing William Blake was the great pre-romantic poet. And after 1793, she even met William Wordsworth, who were the part of this group. All of these members would gather at Johnson's place. In 1796, Wollstonecraft began a liaison with Godwin. It's a kind of relationship, and on March 29, 1797, Mary was pregnant. They got married. Means they were in relationship before the marriage, and before the marriage, she became pregnant. So she got married with Godwin, and the marriage was happy but brief because she died 11 days after the birth of her second daughter. So that is really unfortunate. So her life is full of struggle. And you might be knowing, daughter was none other than the famous romantic writer, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. Mary Shelley, P.B. Shelley's wife. And she is well known for her novel, Frankenstein. You must be knowing it is a romantic novel, and very it is based on science. Yes, it is a kind of gothic novel, and it is very interesting novel. Do read it if you happen to get it. It is written by Mary Shelley, Mary Wollstonecraft's daughter, William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft's daughter. Uh, Apart from the works that I mentioned earlier, certain other notable works are later written during a short residence in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, which was published in the year 1796. A travelogue means the book containing the information related to her travel with a sociological and philosophical bent, and Maria, or The Wrongs of Women, which was published in the year 1798. These two books were a travelogue and Maria, or The Wrongs of Women, were published posthumously, and it remained unfinished. Okay, so it is a novelist sequel to A Vindication of the Rights of Women. Yes, it was this particular book, Maria, or the Wrongs of Women, was a kind of sequel to A Vindication of the Rights of Women, the book that we are going to study. Not all entire book, a chapter from this book we are going to study. So this is what we understand about Mary Wollstonecraft. And as I told, we are going to study one particular chapter second from this book, Vindication of the Rights of Women.